That's exactly what you want through a tradecraft assassination attempt. You want zero tieback, especially through nation to nation. It's extremely important for things like this. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. And if you haven't been following Candace Owens' recent stuff, it's getting crazy out there because she just put out a post the last couple days claiming that there is a credible and bought and paid for assassination plot out on her life by essentially the French government. And now a lot of people right out the gate said, oh, this is just Candace being Candace. She's being bombastic. She's being over the top. However, when I read this post, immediate striking things jumped out to me, given my background and my career, mainly the French units involved. Very, very interesting stuff that maybe make this more credible than everybody's realizing. Okay, so I know a lot of people don't know how all these, high-level tier 1 military units and all this stuff works, but I'm your guy for that, and I'm going to walk you through it and talk a little bit about where this threat is potentially coming from. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Helps the channel. Let's jump into it and see how potentially credible this assassination plot really is. All right, so first thing we got to do, of course, look at the actual post that Candace put out, and I'm going to break the whole thing down in detail following that. All right, here we go. All right, Candace says, urgent. 2 days ago, I was contacted by a high-ranking employee of the French government. After determining this person's position and proximity to the French couple, obviously Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron, I have deemed the information they gave to be credible enough to share publicly in the event that something happens. In short, this person claims that the Macrons have executed upon and paid for my assassination. Oh, yes, you read that correctly. More specifically, that the green light was given to a small team in the National Gendarmerie Intervention Group. That's going to be very important. That'll be the first thing we cover. I am told there is one Israeli that is on the assassination squad and plans were formalized. And this is going to be important, and I'll explain how this is possible here in a minute as well. Again, this person provided concrete proof that they are well placed within the French government apparatus. Further to this point, this person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Legion, and this is important, she left out a very important thing here, the French Foreign Legion, 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. We're going to deep dive that too. This is the most interesting part of the entire post right here that most people have no idea the relevance to the French Foreign Legion and how this could all tie into a potential assassination attempt on her life. Okay. She goes on to say, journalist Javier Pissarrod's life is also at risk. This is deadly serious. The head of state of France apparently wants both of us dead and has authorized professional units to carry this out. I ask that every person retweet and share this. I do not know who in the American government can be trusted since the source claims our leaders are aware. That's a massively bold claim. But I have more specific information which is definitively verifiable should they care to reach out to me. To the brave official in France who did this because they were so moved by the evil of Charlie's public execution to risk their own life, may God bless you truly. Let all be revealed. So obviously these are massive claims by Candace. The fact that a foreign nation's president has planned and approved an assassination plot on her life. Not only that, but our leaders, I'm assuming she means the Trump administration, is also aware of this and has greenlit this. Pretty insane. Sounds almost too unrealistic to be true until you look at what are the incentives. And you don't know about Candace and her coverage of Brigitte Macron. It starts to get a little bit interesting when it comes to that. Also, her coverage of the Charlie Kirk case, her criticisms of Israel, all these different things. The incentives are unfortunately there from a lot of different angles. That doesn't necessarily mean it's credible. However, these units that she talks about are the first thing we need to break down because it's very, very interesting. All right, so first thing we're going to look at, which she talks about, which is the National Gendarmerie Intervention Group, which she says is the group that's going to carry out the assassination attempt on her life. Now, that might sound like some sort of private contractor, Wagner group type of thing, but it's not. This is actually just France's tier 1 domestic counterterrorism unit. Or you could think of it kind of like a Delta force that they use as a domestic police force, okay? So what do they specialize in? Right up front, domestic counterterrorism. Most of you guys actually know who this unit is. Historically, very, very famous unit. They were the ones who took down the 1988 plane hijack in Marseilles. So we're going to take a look at that here in a second. Hostage rescue, protection of government officials, high-level stuff like that domestically. So a lot of you will recognize this immediately because it's super famous, and this is when the French GIGN took down the terrorists who had hijacked this plane in France.
Actual video footage shows the co-pilot, Jean-Paul Borderier, falling onto the hard concrete. Yet he still manages to stagger away to safety. It gives the snipers the chance they've been waiting for. The French news footage captures amazing scenes of the battle. A GIGN man is blasted out of the plane by gunshots.
So the point with this is extremely high-level, highly trained counterterrorism unit, right? And they have expertise in things like breaching, sniping, all the different things that you would want if you needed to take someone out that needed to be taken out, you could say. Now, this is where I stop and go, does it make sense that this would be the unit chosen by the Macrons, hypothetically, if they were to have some assassination plot on Candace Owens' life to come to America to take her out? You would much more expect something that we're going to get into with the French Foreign Legion here in a second, but a CIA Mossad-esque type of unit to be doing this. All right, so the French Foreign Legion, and this is where the story gets extremely, extremely interesting and very, very compelling, because if you don't know anything about the French Foreign Legion and how this whole thing works, okay, the French Foreign Legion actually takes people from all over the world, and a lot of these people have very serious criminal backgrounds, on the run from the law, different things like that. They get brought in and they get turned into special forces, French legionnaires, French Foreign Legion legionnaires, right? And who's a great example of this? Of a guy we know, Taylor Kavanaugh, who we're actually going to have on the show later this week, who was a former Navy SEAL and actually ended up, after some trouble in life, in the French Foreign Legion. We're going to have him come on and deep dive all the connections to all this for us later this week. But my point with that is you have people like former Navy SEALs, former operatives of different countries that come in and become part of the French Foreign Legion. And I'm going to explain why that's very compelling here as it relates to an assassination attempt on Charlie Kirk or Candace Owens' life. So what the French Foreign Legion is really famous for is reinventing identities. And what I mean by that is you can potentially take some high-level operative from a foreign country that's got legal issues, bring them into the French Foreign Legion and reinvent their identity, and they can continue on later in life with a clean slate. Back to what Candace said here, okay? She said this person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Foreign Legion's 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. That becomes very, very interesting because, yes, if you are going to want to hire or use someone to carry out an high-level assassination attempt on somebody like Charlie Kirk's life, the French Foreign Legion's not a bad place to look. You have some extremely high-level, highly trained operatives that could be from anywhere in the world, including, maybe places like our greatest ally that have reinvented their identity that, again, some of which with very questionable morals to begin with. This is where you would definitely look to hire this type of assassin. Now, interesting thing here. Candace says that the assassin trained with the 13th Brigade. Here's where I go, does that really make sense? Maybe, but the 13th Brigade is actually a mechanized infantry brigade. So what that means is they're highly focused on, vehicle-based combat and things like that. I would have expected this to be someone that came from the 2nd REP, which is the 2nd Foreign Parachute Regiment. And the reason why I would say that is because that's where their snipers are typically trained in the French Foreign Legion. If you were going to choose someone to carry out a sniper-esque assassination attempt, typically you'd want to pull somebody from there. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't cross-training and different things like that, or that they couldn't go to a sniper school. That's all possible as well. Now, why is this so interesting to talk about when it relates to the Charlie Kirk assassination or Candace and things like that? That's because if you're France and you're the French government and you really did want to pull something like this off, this is the perfect unit to pull from, because you're pulling potentially people who aren't French, right? They're part of the French Foreign Legion, but they might be German, they might be from the United States, they might be Israeli, right? There's a lot of plausible deniability back towards the French government if the person gets caught and it turns out they're Egyptian or, Canadian or from Beirut or whatever. That's exactly what you want through a tradecraft assassination attempt. You want zero tieback, especially through nation to nation. It's extremely important for things like this. All right, that's why I don't think the GIGN, which Candace talks about being the ones after her, It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. However, the French Foreign Legion being involved all of a sudden raises some pretty serious eyebrows. Now, a lot of people will be asking, like, why? Why would, the French government put out a hit on Candace Owens, a podcaster's life? Well, if you haven't followed her coverage on Brigitte Macron, which I'm not going to delve into, yeah, there's an extreme amount of incentive to shut Candace up. I mean, we know that Macron literally asked Donald Trump to shut her up. Donald Trump called Candace to try to shut her up. They've brought out a lawsuit to try to shut her up. And so when you look at it that way, the incentive is absolutely there to make Candace stop talking. There's no doubt about that, right? Her expose on becoming Brigitte is absolutely wild, okay? And that's not the only incentives out there on Candace Owens. Candace Owens is flying very, very close to the sun on a lot of different topics. Obviously, Crone stuff, very obviously the Charlie Kirk investigation that she's been putting on over the last 2 months, especially the ties to our greatest ally and their potential involvement, the Egyptian government potentially being involved, and then obviously her insane coverage and delving into all of the corruption and sketchiness behind TPUSA. I'm going to be honest, guys, Candace Owens is kind of the #1 most wanted on a lot of people's lists. And for us to just throw away the idea that there may be a credible assassination plot on Candace's life, especially after what we just saw with Charlie Kirk, the fact that Donald Trump had assassination attempt on his life a little over a year ago as well. These things are not that unrealistic, guys. Candace is now the #1 podcast in the world. You turn into her YouTube channel, she's got anywhere from 100 to 150,000 concurrent live viewers at a time. It's absolutely bonkers. She's blown past Joe Rogan. She is the biggest name in independent media. It's not even close. And her influence is now enormous, just like Charlie Kirk's was. An influence on the American people, especially when you're pushing forward narratives that go against our greatest ally, that go against Christian evangelicalism and things like Turning Point USA and all the corruption they have going on. Things that go against foreign nation states, like the president of a foreign country and his wife. She's like Icarus, man. Candace is flying so close to the sun right now on a lot of different topics, right? And historically, a lot of these people don't let you talk about these things, You look at a president, named JFK and a certain ship named after the Statue of Liberty and things like that, and you go, this is actually getting pretty scary. So I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm just looking at things realistically. I hope Candace has her security situation figured out. If not, then Candace should probably reach out to some people that that could help you with that. But I mean, yeah, guys, it's pretty wild. Who knows if this is true or not. If you're Candace Owens, though, I'll tell you, you have to take things like this seriously. Obviously, your best friend just got schwacked, right? The president of the United States almost got schwacked a year ago. The likelihood of someone of her power and influence now being the next target is extremely, extremely high. I think we all know that. So we're going to delve into this a little bit deeper later this week. Hopefully on Friday, we can have Taylor come on and really explain to us how the French Foreign Legion works and where all these people come from and their backgrounds and their sketchy backgrounds a lot of the time. So until then, this one's getting very, very interesting. I got another video coming up on all the lies coming out of Turning Point USA and the head of security going on Sean Ryan with that bizarre interview as well. So stick around for that in the next one, and I'll catch you in the next video.